Welcome to Rocket Ship, the home of epic React Native content. I'm Simon Grimm, creator of Galaxies.dev, and today's guest is Kacper Kapuściak. I hope I pronounced it correctly, who's a React Native open source developer at Software Mention. So you're the second person, I think, from Software Mention after Christoph here on the podcast. You're working a lot on open source. As I said, you sometimes host the React Native community meetup in Krakow, or at least you introduce all the cool new things. So thanks for taking the time today.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. We want to talk today a bit about React Native gesture handlers, Reanimated. We're going to talk about micro-interactions. You had some really cool tweets or threads on Twitter, which I'm not a huge fan, but you actually make really good use of them as you introduce some concepts. But let's start. What are you currently working on actually on at Software Mention?
Okay, so yeah, my job title is React Native open source developer, but that doesn't say a lot. Currently, from engineering point of view, right now, as we are speaking, I'm helping Krzysztof with the React Native IDE project.
Ooh, exciting.
But I used to, first I used to maintain React Native screens for a while. Then I maintained React Navigation for a couple of months with Satya from ColdStack. I created the new documentation of Reanimated. So that was a full rewrite of the documentation. From time to time, I also did something on the state of React Native. You had a podcast on it like yesterday. I've seen it. Yes. So yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of soft skills also related stuff. So I work with the design team from time to time, with the marketing team, as you've mentioned. I do some tweets from time to time as well. So yeah, from engineering point, right now I'm doing the React Native IDE. But lots of stuff around Reanimated and Gesture Handler as well.
Yeah, nice. There's a lot in there that I want to get back to. So we're definitely going to talk maybe at least a bit about the React Native IDE in the end, if you can share something. So we're going to keep people interested.
Yeah, sure.
For now, yeah, I had a podcast with Aaron about the state of the React Native survey. I also did a video. While we're talking about it, it's still fresh. So maybe you can share just like 1, 2, 3 things that stood out to you from the React Native survey. Any thoughts about it?
Right now? Okay, so I've seen from the data, like the recurring theme of the data was people use the default if it's good enough. So the default for fetching is fetch, for default for styles is style sheet. If it's good enough, people will stick to it. If it's not good enough, on the other hand, they will look for the closest alternative. So, for example, animated API, for many people, is good enough, but it was made for a different era. And it doesn't facilitate truly what React Native gives us with the UI threads and all of that. And people just, try to use what's the default or what's close to what they already know. So that's what I've seen from the data.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. You're right with the fetch API and the style sheet. Sometimes the easy solution it just works for people. It's not bad. I'm curious because I kind of jumped immediately into Reanimated because everyone said Reanimated is the best thing, and I still I just think it is the best as well. But what is bad about the animated API? So as far as I know, it's not as bad as it was in the beginning because you can have use native driver right now, so it has actually good performance. But what do you think is bad about the built-in animated API?
Well, so the API was made for class-based components, and it isn't very modern API. But that's one thing. What's worse is the pan responder API is terrible. It's bad. It's bad. It's just say it. It's bad. So the integration with Gesture Handler makes it a bit better. You can't really animate all of the stuff on the use native driver with animated. So the layout props, some of them you just can't animate that. So that's one downside of animated API. And with Reanimated, you also have layout animations, which were introduced in animated, but they are still in experimental phase for forever. So not gonna happen really, because we have Reanimated now.
Maybe it changes with version 1 of React Native then.
Maybe, but I don't think so. Really.
Yeah, that's a good transition. So I actually saw a little bit of going already a step further in the gesture handler documentation. You have something like a swipeable row, and they're like really cool examples of like an Apple style or a Google style swipeable row. But whenever I look at this and take the code as a base, I'm confused because it's actually using animated and not reanimated. So do you plan on changing that in the future?
Yes, there is a project. So we have a roadmap that's not public. I'm sorry, but the roadmap is not public. But we'll plan to also implement pressable, just a pressable component. We have like touchable opacity, you have rect button or other native components, but we don't have a pressable, and we don't have a good enough integration with Reanimated of the components. We have with gestures. Yeah, you can run worklets. It's automatically workletized, so most of the gestures work on the UI thread by default. But yeah, with the components, they're a bit dated, and yeah, they need a rewrite. That's our plan.
Okay, sure. Good to know. But yeah, let's first take a step back. We want to talk about gestures. So why in the first place do we need the React Native gesture handler? Is there no good solution built in? And what does the React Native gesture handler unlock in React Native apps?
Yeah, so I've mentioned pan responder, which is one of the ways to do it the default way, which isn't very well developed. Like it has some limitations, and some of the limitations is, for example, canceling gestures. What should happen? And you can, thanks to the power of Reanimated, you can do stuff synchronously on the UI thread, and that allows you to build some of the gestures that weren't possible before with just pan responder. So you have the built-in in gesture handler tap, long press, and you can like have raise or simultaneous to the composition. That's the word I'm missing. So you can composite gestures to like do all the stuff you need to do in your app. Like there are no limitations for this.
So you had a really good thread, which is I think your like pinned thread on Twitter or X about gestures. Maybe we can go through a few of these because I think it's actually a nice like compilation and just helps me. Also, I looked at it and I was like, okay, all of this is possible. So the first thing is the pen. I think the pen gesture is just like dragging stuff across the screen, or
exactly. That's all there is to it. Just drag. It could be named drag, but yeah, it's pan.
Why is it called pan?
In React Native, it's called pan recognizer, so that's why.
I think it's also is it in native iOS also something with pen?
Yeah,
I think I remember.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so then we have the tap. Okay, that's probably the easiest
one. You
can
also implement a double tap with that and triple tap. Gesture handler makes you possible to build it because you can like chain the code to the gesture.tap and implement other types of taps. Yep.
Nice. Okay, then we also have the rotation. Okay, this is also pretty self-explaining. I can rotate stuff. Then we have the long press, which is really a great one for longer pressing. And then we have the pinch. The pinch is kind of like a signature gesture of native devices, right?
You can scale things up and down. Yeah.
Is there anything? Okay. Oh yeah, we got the fling. Okay, fling is probably something you might have to explain. So what is the fling gesture?
Okay, so that's a bit confusing. You have to like apply enough force for it to move the element. So you need to make the gesture, the fling, enough velocity for the component, and you can customize it to move. So if you just like slightly touch it, it won't move. So that's a flingy.
Where's like a component or scenario where you usually use a fling gesture?
Maybe unlocking the device with some enough velocity to move the component.
I actually for everyone who can't imagine these gestures, Kacper did put in like real world scenarios next to these. So I really like it. So for the fling gesture, it is pulling out a cable of a USB port where you have to pull and
put some force. Yeah, you need to apply some force to pull the cable out of the USB port. That's exactly the gesture.
Yeah, I understand it in the real world. I'm just not entirely sure where I would use it in an application, but
we
pretty
give
sure
you
that
the tools to create anything you want. We don't always tell you what should build.
it's like with the science. They were so occupied. If you can do it, they did not think if you should do it.
And since the thread has published, there is also a new gesture. There is a gesture hover. So you have a universal hover gesture beyond like Apple, Android, and web. Just one code. Yeah.
Nice. Does hover do anything on mobile? I sometimes feel like there is some relation working.
On iPad, for example, there is this. You have the stylus of Apple Pencil. Yeah, the Apple Pencil. You can with the newest one, you can hover over, and with Samsung devices, there's also like Samsung Note device line, which you can hover over the device. But the hover for most of the devices is just a mouse, plugged mouse to your iPad or phone. This is hover.
I see. Yeah, but
so it works.
Maybe in the future it becomes more important. Maybe in the future, like devices can see when your thumb or finger is across the screen. Who knows? It might become important.
On Vision OS, I think it's just like hover. So your eyes are just like mouse, kind of.
Yeah, that's crazy anyway. That's totally mind-blowing. Okay, so these are the gestures, but if we just look at the gesture handler, it kind of enables all these things like tap, fling, long press. But for example, for all the demos or GIFs you included in there, you still have to use Reanimated, right? It's not like the gesture handler is moving anything on the screen, right?
Yeah, you're right. So it works like there's a tight integration between gesture handler and Reanimated on the shared values. So every gesture you build on top of shared values. The shared values are the driving factor of every animation and gesture. So you do the animation using the shared value and use animated style, for example. You can also use inline styling for that, but that's beyond this. And you attach a gesture to the shared value. When you change the shared value using a gesture, the animation reacts, so it changes the styles. So yeah, it's all on the Reanimated.
So there is kind of a coupling between gesture handler and Reanimated.
Yes.
Is there also a coupling like in terms of the libraries, or could I still use them independent from each other?
You can for sure use it independently. You can use Reanimated without gesture handler. You can use gesture handler without Reanimated, but that will be slower.
So I could use, for example, then gesture handler with just the animated API as you did in the swipeable components. Yeah, nice. Okay, good to know some basics. So I honestly haven't used it too much yet, but I'm pretty sure I should use it more often. And you had a great thread as well on micro-interactions. And I'm a huge fan of micro-interactions. I just did, I worked on a WhatsApp clone. And if you inspect these applications more closely, you're going to see so many small micro-interactions in these applications like WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube. So could you describe what micro-interactions actually means in the first place?
So so we need to step back a little bit, because if there are micro-interactions, there are also macro-interactions. And I have my knowledge on the factor from a book called Microinteractions by Dan Saffer, which is a great book, a bit dated, but the examples are a bit dated, but the content is still there. I highly recommend that. And in this book, he tells us that there are, not only microinteractions, but also macrointeractions. And we have let's think about example. So I'm sure you've used a car. Yeah. Or my second favorite example is a smart vacuum cleaner, but let's stick with a car. So the main feature of your car is to get from point A to point B, safely.
Yes.
So you can drive from point A to point B. That's the feature. That's the macro interaction of a car. But when you get into a car, everything you do inside. So you change the volume of the radio, you put in the key, the sound of the doorknob. So everything else is a interaction, is a micro interaction. So you can tell a Dacia from a Lexus, right? So what's changed? The main feature of both of these cars is to get you from point A to point B. But there are many ways to differentiate. And you differentiate by building a good product. And you do that by, like you said, the details, right?
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy to understand micro-interaction. I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, it totally makes sense.
So if you think about it, everything is a micro-interaction. Like logging into your app, it's a micro-interaction that you can make better, make more pretty or more useful. So everything, really. So every button.
So if everything is a micro-interaction in my app, how do I find out where to begin? Like, I have only limited time, and like maybe I can do, I don't know, 10 micro-interactions. So how would I figure out what are like the relevant things where a micro-interaction makes sense?
So yeah, development time and development in general is expensive. Like, let's say it. We are expensive.
Yes,
that's true. And we've seen from the State of React Native survey that many of us work on the smaller companies, or we didn't say that from the data, but maybe from VC-funded companies that have a tight budget. So if you do stuff natively, like many of the apps just break the defaults of the platform. So, for example, disabling the gesture swipe on iOS, or building their own models, or which can't use gestures. So if you just stick to the native components, that's good enough for many. Like, let's start with that. Okay, what can we do more? So, once again, recurring theme. Animations are expensive. Maybe you have a designer that could help you with some of the animations. Maybe you can do them in Lottie or Rive or something else that just don't require that much of development time. So these are like tiny details on a click, on scrolling. Yeah, so I would start with that. So for example, on Slack, if you over scroll, go down on the scroll view, there's a tiny message telling you like, oh, hey, you've seen it. That's a nice detail, right? So I would start with that.
Yeah, I agree. In your in one of the examples I've seen, you have like when you click a tab button, it I think spins the icon or something.
Yeah, that's very easy to do with Reanimated. That's literally a couple of lines of code, so that's not very expensive to build. So yeah, that's one of the animations I would suggest.
Yeah, I think, probably doing something about the usual tab bar interface is a good starting point, because 90% of the apps these days feel like they have a tab bar, and it's always the same.
And I would say even more that, well, again, expensive, but I love really layout animations. These are my the most useful for me, or for most of the people, because they are so easy to build. Like layout, okay, for those of you that don't know what layout animations are, these are animations that are invoked during like when the component is appearing or disappearing from the screen, right? And normally these are very hard to animate, like manually with shared values or whatever. But with Reanimated, you can there's a prop on any animated component, on animated view, animated image, or any animated components you make with create animated component. They're called entering, exiting, and layout props. And you can just provide what should happen with a component when it appears. It's so simple. Like I really love it because it takes no time to implement for the user.
Yeah, I think I used it as well when I wanted to build a list component and I wanted to remove stuff and like have animations and like little delays or so in the reordering of the list, and that usually looks kind of ugly. But if you like at the parent list element add a layout animation, everything becomes a lot smoother if you add a little delay here and there. It feels like magic almost.
Yeah. You need to remember to make the list also animated. So the list also has to be animated.flat list for it to work. That's a common bug we see from the users.
Yeah.
Just by the writer.
And in your documentation, I think you also have layout animations like reordering stuff in a grid view, or what's possible as well beyond all of that.
Yeah. So there are layout animations, so entering and exiting animations, and there are also layout transitions. Well, nomenclature.
That's the difference.
So you can animate what should happen with the layout when the hierarchy changes. So when the components get removed, you can orchestrate how it should layout look like after. So with some animation.
Yeah. Okay. We got gestures, we got reanimated, we got layout animations. It's quite a lot of areas where we can make the app better, right?
Yeah. And there also will come in the future, I should hope, shared element transitions that I think you like.
Right. It's like you can read my notes for our conversation. So you already answered what layout animations are. Could you also describe what shared element transitions means?
So it's a concept for Android, I think. And so you can tell between the navigation screens what should happen with a device during the transition, not the device, the element, obviously. So what should happen with an element on changing the navigation screen? So you can animate them. Yeah, that's it. That's basically it.
I think it's on iOS these days as well. Like when you press on a card and it expands and becomes like the top image. I think this is like the most common theme of a shared element transition.
Yeah, there are. It's called auto animate, I think, on Swift UI, and it doesn't work between navigation screens. It only works on the same screen. So you have to like. Make
really?
It feel, yeah. So it's only on the same screen, I think. So you have to mimic that you go to another screen.
So React Native can actually do more than Swift natively can do.
In this, yes. In this example, yes. It's not stable yet. We are working on this.
Okay, I felt it's okay. So what is then the state of the current shared element transition? Because I used it and it looked good, and I could animate some properties. But if you say it's still a work in progress, what are the current limitations of shared element transitions, and what's coming in the next time?
Yeah, so currently the biggest bug we have are crashes during development. So that's what we need to fix in the closest future for it to be usable by the developers. Because right now you have to rebuild your whole app. So that doesn't really feel React Native-ish because hot reload doesn't work. So that's pretty broken right now. And the next steps would be to add more properties to animate. So for example, right now, you can't really animate text really well. So that's one of the areas to improve. We've added borders, border radii, but yeah, still a lot to cover.
I think it also had some issues with the save areas, if I remember this correctly, or something. If you like have a header on one page and don't have a header on the next page,
that works right now. I think it should
or
work.
Maybe it's fixed.
There will be. There was problems with headers and with save areas. Yes, that's true. I think right now it should work. I'm pretty sure it works, but if not, we'll be fixing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was a fix, and then it just didn't work with the Expo Go app and reanimated versions.
Expo Go is another.
Yeah. Did you post that thing that we should not use Expo Go anymore, or was that someone else?
No, that's not me. That's
okay, it wasn't you.
Yeah, probably maybe Tomasz Sapeta, maybe.
Maybe. So, okay, micro-interactions are great. Usually they're, just reanimated. Sometimes they're a combination of reanimated and gesture handler, I guess. If you think about some unlocking thing, or the swipeable row, of course, is a very common thing. By the way, again, there's a great starting point if you want to implement a swipeable row. Check out the documentation for the gesture handler, and at some point you're going to find it. There is already a swipeable component, I think. And these, like the Apple style row on the Gmail, are just concrete examples of implementing the swipeable row.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So that is a very good starting point for everyone who's interested in it. It just one thing, I don't know how well you know it. I just felt there is something missing, because usually you can like drag until the complete end, and then like it's hard to describe on a podcast.
Okay.
I mean, you can just drag it a bit and then it reveals 2 buttons. Okay, that's cool. But if you then drag it completely to one side, usually you see something like that one option is selected and triggered immediately. That wasn't included yet, so maybe there's a little feedback for the future of that component.
We'll take that.
So how far is the web support for all of these things? Because Gesture's great, Reanimated great. How far is the web support, and where are still some problems?
So so with Gesture Handler, we have it sorted. With I think 2.10, we've completely rewrote the web support to remove the dependency on Hammer.js. So it's all like native events with Gesture Handler. So it's done on Gesture Handler. With Reanimated, just a couple of weeks ago, so in the last version 3.6, we've released layout animations on the web. So that's one of the missing features that Reanimated had. But shared values, the thing you use to build animations with Reanimated mostly work. So measure works. So we go like feature by feature basis, what do we need to implement on the web next. But right now, it's pretty, the feature parity is pretty great, I would say.
What happens on the web when I use Reanimated and define something as a worklet? I mean, on native, it's executed in the UI thread. What happens on the web?
There are no worklets. Like it's just a function, JS function. There are no other threads available.
Does it crash if I define like a worklet, or do you catch that?
That's a no-op. It just does nothing. Like it just invokes that function because it's a JavaScript function. But there are some tricks to make it more asynchronous. Like it's not as fast as mobile because you don't have that UI thread to run animations on. We do some parkour to achieve the API we currently have on the web, but it works. The feature parity is okay, I would say.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, we're living in a time where universal apps and Expo Router for the web and stuff becomes more important. Yes. So it's really important that like these. I feel like Gesture Handler and Reanimated are some of the core libraries. Almost they come pretty much directly after routing for me. So making them work on the web is thanks to Software Mention and the contributors to open source. It works really great. So you also said initially that you would love to talk about the future of these packages. And I'm always curious about this because this is the point where only you can give us insight into what's going on. I have no idea. As you said, you have an internal roadmap. I don't know what you can share and how far you're involved with the projects right now. As you said, you're also working on this other project, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But let's start. For Gesture Handler, I feel like it's feature complete. So tell me, is there anything planned for Gesture Handler in the future?
Mainly, currently, it's just maintenance. So there are some. When the Vision OS came, we had to make a support for it. But mostly for Gesture Handler, that's just maintenance. But for Reanimated, we are currently working on a feature called we call it screen transitions. So it's an integration between Gesture Handler, screens, and Reanimated that you can. Instead of having some predefined native animations between screens, you could animate the screens using just Reanimated. So currently we have swipe to go back implemented. You can have your own custom animation on the go back, bound to the progress of your finger. That's cool.
This is really exciting. Yeah, I remember in the past when I worked with different frameworks, people always asked about native transitions or custom transitions. Especially, do you still remember this animation where it looked like you're flipping a page in a book?
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, you can do that using Skia and shaders, and I think using okay, never mind. Okay, never mind. I'm not going into that hole.
But this definitely sounds interesting. So have you tried some of these transitions? What is possible? Like, what is a cool scenario of using them?
Yeah, so you have a way of achieving, okay, again, go back. So you can animate the top screen and the bottom screen of the transition. And you have the ability to get like the current offset of the screen, the progress between the transitions. And you can just do translate X, translate Y, rotate, scale, all the stuff you know from animated styles. So you can, for example, on swipe, you can make the screen rotate. I don't know why would you do that, but you can do that. Or you can implement the Tinder swipe. So it's kind of juggling from left to right. So yeah, that kind of thing.
I think I don't know if this falls into this category, but one thing I really like or have seen is, for example, in the WhatsApp stories. I mean, I don't know exactly who uses WhatsApp stories beyond my wife and some friends, but if you're in the story and you swipe down, it rounds the screen like until this circle becomes smaller, and once you're at the bottom, it just like disappears. Is this something we could?
Yes, that's exactly the feature for that. Screen transitions. That's exactly for this.
Nice. Yeah, I was always thinking about, okay, how can I do this? It's going to be really complicated.
Yeah,
I don't want to do this.
With that, it's easy. You have the, like, from 0 to 1, you have the progress of the swiping down. I've used it just the other day. So yeah, and you can round the borders of the screen just like that.
And then you define, just like inside a TypeScript file, you define like animation.ts, and then you react to these points and do the usual reanimated thing.
So there are 2 new props. There will be 2 props on the screen, on the native stack. Like go back animation, and what should happen, I don't know the name from the top of my head. How should it behave? Like, should be swipe right or swipe left or swipe top? And you get in the config, you define what should happen with the top screen and from the bottom screen with this data. So yeah, that's it. That's a couple of lines of code.
So you said this is a go back prop on the stack, but it also works for pushing, if I understood this right.
No. Currently,
is this
no.
Only for back?
Right now, yes, but we would like to have that for push as well. But that's not implemented right now.
Yeah, sadly. I mean, I don't know a lot about. I haven't really seen a custom push animation, I guess, on iOS. I can't remember. Most apps probably just use the stock push.
Yeah, but it's doable, but we haven't started even implementing that.
Okay, so I can define my back, and then I can just like point to what that animation file exports, and then I can define my cool back transition. Nice. Yeah. I really like that. For which version is this planned? I think currently we're on 3.6-ish?
3.7 from yesterday, or 2 days ago. There was 3.7.
Okay.
So our roadmap doesn't count numbers, so we don't promise that, yes, this version will be having that. But it's they're close to merge. These features are close to be merged. So the changes that needed to be done on the screens, React Native screens, are merged, and I think will be released with the next release. With Reanimated, probably the next version, so 3.8 maybe.
Nice. That sounds good. You said it has a close integration with React Navigation. I'm always interested in Expo Router. I know Expo Router is using React Navigation under the hood, but do you know if this is going to work with Expo Router as well?
Yeah, that's the same thing. Expo Router and React Navigation are the same thing. So, because, okay, so if you think about it, you know Expo Router pretty well. So if you just squeeze your eyes a little bit, you defined the screens using files instead of code. And yes, you could do this in the previous version of React Navigation, and you will be able to do it again with React Navigation 7, I think. There is a static API going back. So you will be able to define the screens using just JSON file, like the Expo Router is doing like that. It's just on files instead of code. And it's using React Navigation and React Native screens under the hood. So
you sound like you're not a big fan of Expo Router. I don't know why.
No.
I'm just picking up.
No. So no. That's not like that. No, it's fine.
So it's a good addition on top of. I mean, it's nothing like it's building completely on React Navigation, I guess. Because it's like the foundation, so it's just on top some cool stuff.
I just maintained React Navigation for a couple of months, so I just knew it really well. I've used React Router, Expo Router for a little bit, but it doesn't. For me, it's not as game changer as for others. But yeah, the TypeScript support is pretty great. Automatic. Yeah. That's amazing, actually.
Yeah, the TypeScript support is cool. I've been for a long time a big fan of it. Right now, I'm also, because of the latest version and the API routes, I'm a huge fan. But I understand also at this point that some people are not interested in universal apps. Some people don't want a full stack project, and native has different requirements. So maybe just using React Navigation is also great if you just want a great iOS and Android app, and you don't care about the rest from Expo Router.
I say React Navigation is just fine for many. So that's it. If Expo Router fixes your problem, then use it. But if you don't, then it's okay.
I guess it will introduce it does actually introduce new problems to some people with the groups and the layouts and how you structure stuff.
So if you don't know React Navigation very well, you will have some harder time working with Expo Router.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so this is one big thing coming to Reanimated in the future. Is there anything else you know of that is being worked on, or that is in the scope for the next year in terms of big features for Reanimated?
So we are also working from time to time on multi-threading functionalities, but I'm not the best person to ask that. But so spawning worklets on not only UI thread, but some background threads as well, and threads at will. So that's not really connected to animations, and we will probably need to extract that worklets core of Reanimated to a separate package in some time in the future. But the multi-threading capabilities that could unlock some cool stuff for others. Not just animation, but yeah.
You're also working on client projects at Software Mention, right?
Yes.
It's so easy to forget. We're talking about all of these huge contributions to open source, but you're also a company and you work on real projects, right?
Yeah. So, Software Mention is a for-profit company, obviously, but we have many people working either full-time or part-time on just open source. So my team is currently around 10 to 12 people right now. Some of them are also working for clients. But yeah, we are contributing a lot of time and effort to open source.
Yeah, just from the whole React Native community, again, thank you for all of this. I think React Native and the community wouldn't be the same without people and companies like you. Otherwise, we would have a ton of unmaintained packages. We wouldn't see a lot of progress, and what you and other companies are doing is just amazing in terms of how you push forward the whole ecosystem. So just thank you so much for what you're doing.
You're welcome.
So finally, we want to wrap this up with a quick talk about the React Native IDE. So I talked with Christoph. It was in, I think, December or something.
Mm-hmm.
His demo was pretty big on one of the meetups, and everyone got hyped. And since then, it has been basically silent. I think he did post maybe a few pictures. I think he also mentioned on Twitter that he had some personal issues or stuff going on. Mm-hmm. So what is the current state of the React Native IDE as you worked on it probably just days ago?
Yeah, so we are currently in a stage of testing it on our own developers at Software Mention. So there's a private beta inside the company. So we are testing whether it works, whether the setups are working, because people have very different setups, and you have to trust me. It's not just create Expo app and that's it, but people customize it really, really hardly, and some of the stuff just don't currently work with React Native IDE. But we are squashing the bugs, making it more performant, and the public beta is coming.
Okay. And it is planned it still is a VS Code plugin. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Because most of the React Native developers already use VS Code. So why not to build on something that people already know and love?
Will there be any limitations? Is there any hard blocker right now? Or are you generally fine with everything you've put into the IDE?
No, it's pretty okay. There are no major blockers as of today. We had some performance problems, but we've figured it out.
So are you using it for your work already?
So I only have that on my company computer, and I'm not using it on my private projects. So yeah. But I've run our example apps from reanimated screens and Gesture Handler, and it worked pretty well.
Oh, I'm so excited. Do you have any date in your mind how long the beta will take, or?
Never estimate. No, we won't promise anything. Never estimate.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay. We're gonna be excited. I mean, there are some conferences coming up, so I'm pretty sure Software Mention will release something or have some cool notes at those conferences.
Maybe
Reanimated.
I'm not saying anything. I don't know anything.
Okay, but the good news is it will happen in 2024. I mean, the year's still long, but we can be excited about cool things coming to Reanimated and also coming to the IDE. So, Kacper, thank you so much for coming on, taking the time to explain a bit about Gesture Handler, the Microinteractions, and what's going on at Reanimated. To wrap it up, where can find people more out about you and what you're doing currently?
Mostly Twitter, and maybe on YouTube in the future, but I don't know. Mostly currently on Twitter.
Okay, I will drop this in the show notes. And actually, yeah, I can recommend during my research, I found 2 tutorials on the Software Mention channel from you about how to make an bottom sheet with a React Native Reanimated and an animated gradient picker, which are really, really great examples of how all the stuff plays together. I will also put this in the show notes. And you actually did a really good job on those tutorials, taking a lot more time than I do, because you have like little sequences in between where you use the app and say, oh, I would really love to have this. And then you go back to the code.
That's so much work. You have no idea. Or you do actually are a content creator, so you actually do have an idea.
I do take a little bit easier route. So you have some B-roll about filming your device and stuff. I can definitely learn from, like, this is really cool. I mean, sometimes it translates to more views. Sometimes it just looks cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I can definitely recommend for these tutorials.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming on, and probably wanna talk again when the React Native IDE comes out or something happens later this year. And until then, thanks again, Kacper.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.